our final Motivation Monday podcast of 2020. Wow, what a year it has been. For those who are just joining for the first time, welcome to the Brawn Body Podcast. I'm your host, Dan, and today is our last Motivation Monday of 2020. So every Monday, we release these short little motivational clips to help you get fired up and energized to tackle your week. We've had a lot of positive feedback so far on them, and luckily for you, we are going to continue them into 2021. And today, I want to talk about something that I was actually talking about yesterday on another podcast that I was featured on as a guest. They're going to air the episode later in 2021, but we recorded it yesterday. And that was how we got started with the Brawn Body Podcast. So a lot of people think, before you start something, you go through all the checklists, you spend a lot of time reading and learning, like, oh, I should do this, I should do this, I shouldn't do that, kind of getting lost in all the fine details of things and kind of losing sight of the true purpose and that end goal. And that was me at first. I had no idea how to start a podcast. I had no idea how to host or run a podcast or get guests. I was clueless and just really shooting in the dark with a lot of things. But what I ended up doing is I just went after it and I made it happen and I figured it out along the way. I like to use the analogy that I jumped off a cliff and taught myself to build an airplane on the way down. It's that kind of thing that we need to be doing more of. What do I mean by that? How often in your life are you living in fear? What is that fear of? Is it failure? Is it not knowing how to do something? What is it? What is it that's holding you back? What is it that's preventing you from living that true purpose, living in and soaking in the freedom of your daily life? When I got started with this podcast, I didn't really know what was going to come of it, to tell you the truth, but it was exciting. It was the thought of something new, something different, something adventurous, and diving into that unknown thing. We are wired to love the unknown. Why do you think people spend thousands of dollars every year traveling and adventuring and going places that they've never been before? We love the next great frontier. It's wired into us. So why not create that next frontier for us, for yourself? If you spend all this time trying to figure out how to run the podcast, how to make a podcast, how to do this, that, the other thing, you're only going to learn what other people are telling you. You're only going to learn their way, their method, their information. That's it. You're never going to own it and make your own method and make your own means to doing things. You're never going to create your own approach. You're never going to explore that aspect of yourself that has to solve problems and think critically and figure out all these new things that you've never had to do before. So with that, whatever it is that you're currently afraid of, whatever it is that, you don't want to jump into right now, whatever it is that, you've been kind of waffling on, you're like, yeah, I should do that, but I don't want to do it right now. The timing's not right, whatever it might be. The timing is never going to be perfect. Never. So stop making excuses and just dive in. Again, I got caught up in this myself with this podcast. I've probably got caught up in it with this business before too. And ultimately, the best thing you can do is to just dive in and go for it. Worst case scenario is you make a mistake. You fail. But guess what? That failure fuels the next attempt. That failure fuels the next step in your success story. And if you fail, you're going to learn a lot more than the perfectionist. It's okay to fail. I love failure. And I know that might sound crazy. Most people are like, well, you're a grad student. You should love the 4.0, right? But think about it. Anytime you make a mistake, you learn. You never forget that again. If you mess up a question on a test, you're never going to forget that ever again, right? I messed up a question in biomechanics on arthrokinematics. First exam, I flipped the arthrokinematics on the shoulder joint. And guess what? I remember them perfect to this day. I can tell you without a doubt that shoulder abduction involves a superior roll and inferior glide of the glenohumeral joint. So that's the convexity of the humeral head on the concavity of the glenoid of the scapula. I can remember that. I know that. I own that information now, and I can recall it any time because I made that mistake, because I had that failure in the past. So get fired up. Make it happen. No excuses. And if you fail, it's okay, because you're going to pick up and you're going to do it again and do it again and do it again. And if you just keep throwing crap against the wall, eventually something is going to start to stick. So with that, thanks for listening to our last Motivation Monday of 2020. We've got one more podcast episode coming for you in 2020 on this Wednesday, so stay tuned for that. We're going to be featuring a very special guest. We always like to end the year on a high note. Otherwise, thank you for listening and supporting the Brawn Body Podcast. We really appreciate all of your love and support and just all the messages and comments that we've gotten throughout 2020. It's definitely been a crazy year. We can't wait to tackle 2021 with you together. Get fired up because we're just getting started. So make sure you like, subscribe, and follow on social media at Brawn Body, Brawn with a W. Thanks again for listening. Have a good week.